All right, for this RTFSC, I'm going to see if I can get through the Once Campfire Rails app in under 10 minutes. Well, let's see if we can do this. All right, so quickly, what is Once Campfire? It's a chat-based application. You can send DMs. It's pretty much like Slack or Teams. It has search, all these features. Let's just jump right into it. All right, so I have cloned this repo here. And again, here's the README explaining what the thing does. It's deployed via Docker, so that's just a way of packaging everything up and throwing it on a server. It makes deployments easier. Let's go ahead and look at the models here. I always like starting with a user model since, those are kind of God objects. They tell you everything that's going on. So this makes sense. A user has many memberships. There's a lot of rooms through memberships, so this lets you add and remove members to applications or to rooms, and there's messages, reachable messages. I'm not sure what those are. Push subscriptions. Those are probably, yep, for web push notifications. So in other words, you can get the little pop-up, hey, you got a message. All right, sessions, destroy. Interesting. All right, so there's sessions, I think, on the server. Yeah, cool. That's a good way to do it. The nice thing about having sessions on the server is that you can revoke the thing. So if a device gets lost or something like that, you can just go through and delete your session. I don't know if it actually works that way in the UI, but it's in the database, so that's pretty cool. You can deactivate users. This just deletes all their stuff. All right, sounds fantastic. All right, so a room, it has many memberships. There's a lot of users, messages, opens and closes. I'm not really sure what these are. That's interesting. So rooms open. Grant access to all users. Okay, all right. So these are rooms that are, anybody can join these things, or if it's a closed room, then only certain people can join these things. So let's look at closed.rb, room closed. Nice. So by default, these things are locked down, and I'm sure direct, that's just like messaging between two people. So these are direct messages. That's an interesting way to model it. It's pretty cool. All right. And then we have these things here that check types. That's interesting. It looks like maybe STI was used. I'm not sure. Yeah. All right. Um, let's look at schema. So schema is a really good way to figure out kind of what is going on in a, is there no schema in here? Schema.rb. Oh, structure.sql. All right, so interesting. The schema is in a SQL file. I don't have syntax highlighting for that. I was expecting to see a schema.rb file, but anyway, this shows us the structure of the database. So um, instead of it being in an RB file, it's SQL. I don't know if that has anything to do with this being on a SQLite database, but that is an interesting way to do it. Let's keep rolling through here. Let's check out a user's controller and we'll see kind of how those things are done. All right, so require unauthenticated access, only new and create. I do like looking at the authentication methods just because it gives you a good idea of how does security work here. So this is skipping authentication for require authentication. Let's go ahead and see what this method has inside of it. All right, and looks like there's a few different authentication mechanisms here. Restoring bot, or you can request a new authentication, probably to log in. Man, the wind has really picked up. It's hot, so that's good. All right, so let's see what request authentication looks like. I want to see what goes on in an authentication situation here. So bot authentication, it's for a key. That makes sense. It's like an API key. Restore authentication, it's just finding a session. So let's see, resume session. So all of this is in a module and authentication. All right, I'm not going to spend too much more time on this. It's interesting though, I know like all the authentication is in a concern, authorization, room scoping. So there's a ton of concerns here. All right, I'm 4 minutes in. I think I have a pretty good idea of my controllers and kind of the way that those things are structured. And I have a good idea of the callbacks on the thing. These things are very resourceful in that they seem to be like, yeah, this is good. So what I mean by that is you have a resource that maps cleanly to a controller. There's not a lot of custom actions, as we can see here. It's mostly like kind of CRUD operations on these individual controllers. That keeps things a lot easier to kind of understand and maintain. I find if you get a bunch of custom actions and controllers, it can get tricky to understand things. So this is pretty good. It's a pretty simple routes file. Trying to think of what else to look at here. Let's check out some of the views and we'll see what a view looks like for a room. All right, so we've got a lot going on here. There's instance variables being set from the view, content for head. Looks like there's some turbo being used here. Turbo exempts page from preview. I have never seen that. It's not jumping up anywhere else here, so I'm actually not sure where that's coming from, um, which is interesting. That should show up here. Unless I have regex. No. All right, so I can't find that. Let's see if I can find this one. There we go. I have yellow jackets just dive bombing me. All right, so it looks like they're using tags, tag helpers here. So it's a button tag, an image tag. So they're kind of using helpers to build up tags using Ruby methods. This is one way to componentize things. I would say use Flex, but this works too. There's some nice things about if you do put your helper methods in here, they are in line and they're all kind of in one place. And then of course you can cleanly pass it a value and it will return something without blowing up. It won't blow up if you pass the wrong stuff into it. All right, we have QR code helpers. So there's a lot of helpers here. And it looks like these things are mostly cranking out markup for a lot of different things. All right, let's see what some jobs are. So push message. There's not a ton of jobs here. I don't know if that makes sense or not. I guess if you throw something in a chat, it's immediately going to be broadcast out. So I am curious though, like how are let's see if turbo streams are used. How are things broadcast in here? So if you have, let's do turbo frame tags. There's a lot of turbo frames. Turbo stream replace. All right, so it's a lot of turbo streams. I think that's being used for messages. And I see some stuff here for users, some stuff for edit, sidebar helper, turbo frames, turbo streams. So create, yeah, all right. So if you create a message, I think this is where the magic happens, where it's saying, all right, append the message to the room so that will broadcast out to everybody else, hey, there's a new message here. And people don't have to refresh the page to see whatever it is that they want to see. All right, so I have a pretty good handle on the views. I guess the thing that I have not looked at yet is the gem file. So let's have a look at that. There's usually a lot of good stuff in the gem file. I really should have started there, but I didn't. All right, so yeah, Basecamp famously uses SQLite 3. I love SQLite. I actually use it now for most of my projects. There's major caveats to it. I would not cargo cult that if I were you. Do your research, but if you're kicking off a small Rails project, even a medium-sized one, you could run SQLite on this huge machine with like 96 cores to scale pretty far if you needed to. Anyway, I don't want to spend too much time selling SQLite. Just know that if you go there, there's some homework you need to do. Redis, cool. Redis is in a lot of projects. I'm not a fan of Redis. I'm guessing this is used maybe to deal with broadcasts and things like that. If I need to broadcast stuff, I'll use Falcon with Action Cable Next, I think it's called, and that just kind of broadcasts everything on one instance of Falcon, which works well with SQLite. If you had to scale this thing out across multiple nodes, this would be terrible to use SQLite. Do not do that. You could just use Postgres and you could blast broadcast messages through there, or Action Cable messages. Puma's a good server. It's proven. It's run on threads. Check out Falcon though. It supports async Ruby, which would, the thing I was talking about where you don't need Redis. If you install Falcon and Action Cable Next, you just need that in SQLite and you have a pretty good setup. Rescue, that's a job worker that runs on Redis. It does have lower latency, so it's probably good for chat. Again, if you have to scale it across multiple nodes. I would not do that in this case. This is using SQLite, so it's stuck on one node. You don't need to have Redis or this. Just, again, Falcon and a few other things. All right, so prop shaft import maps, great. Not a lot of asset pipeline there. We have turbo rails and stimulus rails. Fantastic. Image processing, probably to deal with, obviously, images and making image previews. Sentry, I don't think you need that unless you're using symmetry. That's to monitor for errors. I have 30 seconds. All right. Bcrypt for passwords, web push to get messages out. We got QR code generation, JBuilder. I'm not sure what this is for. That's interesting. I would want to know more about this. Redis is another client for Redis. Again, you probably don't need Redis for something like this. You can do all this with SQLite. Platform agent, not sure what that is. Thruster, I think, is some kind of deployment tool. And I bet I don't actually see any of the other deployment stuff, but that's it.